Number 5, I'm thinking this is going to be the last one. At least I hope it is. Let's see now. We were dealing with, the fact that it is difficult to discuss some of these issues. There are a lot of people who want to silence the discussion of difference. They're very uncomfortable by it, and they get mad at you. Some parents don't want to hear it. You still have a responsibility to do it. You really do. Because your responsibility, yes, it is to the parents. They are the taxpayers. You can be respectful to them, but there's certain things we're going to deal with, and that's all there is to it. And we have to put our foot down sometimes and say, I understand your concerns. However, we have a diverse population here, and we have to serve all of them. You would want me to serve your child. We're serving all children here, and we're making certain that they can get along, and the school can be a good, safe place for everybody that is affirming for everybody. And I know you can express it in those proper terms to get even the most recalcitrant parents at least to get partially on board. Race and SES in the elementary classroom is difficult to discuss these things, she says. Yeah, and there are materials, by the way. I meant to mention this. I put these on the bed here in order to show you. All right. Viva la Causa. This one here, Viva la Causa, the story of Cesar Chavez. This is more middle and high school. I happen to like this one a lot. And then Teaching Tolerance, A Time for Justice, America's Civil Rights Movement. There are all kinds of DVD programs offered by the education arm of the Southern Poverty Law Center for free to teachers at all levels to teach these things. And you can adapt the programs to your own usage. I've used them any number of times. In one of them is A Place at the Table, which was an one of the older iterations of their program where they were teaching diversity issues and such. And I think it still exists and now is on DVD. So you might want to get a hold of the Southern Poverty Law Center. Go to their website, Southern Poverty Law Center. That's Morris D's organization. And get into the Teaching Tolerance Project and see what they have for you that you can use in school. All right. They also have a magazine that they put out. So there's an example of some free resources you can use. They're already made up by experts. Another one is the Federal Department of Education has a lot of stuff on its website to help teachers deal with these issues as well. Let's say you're in a high school and a group of gay kids come up to you and want to establish a gay-straight alliance, which they have the right to do. You can look up the materials for them, and you can also look up what goes on in one of those organizations, what should go on. It's like a kit. You'll find everything you need, including web resources that are approved by the feds, that have been vetted by them, by the Department of Education, that you can use in order to help your students establish a GSA, a Great Gay Straight Alliance, as they have the right to do. And your principal does not have the right to say no. Just doesn't. All right? Now, you don't have standing as a teacher. I get mad when I think about these things. To bring a suit on behalf of or a complaint on behalf of your kids, although you can inform organizations like Lambda Legal and like the ACLU what's going on. But the parents of these kids, if they're supportive of their kids, have the absolute right to insist that the students get a GSA and that it be treated like every other club. If your school has a Fellowship of Christian Athletes and doesn't have a GSA because the administration has made the determination that the Fellowship of Christian Athletes gets preference, not only is religion being preferred and indirectly taught in your school as a result, and that is unconstitutional, I hate to tell you, you are also suppressing an organization which has the right to exist under the EAA, which was signed by Ronald Reagan, I believe, and was expanded in 1993, if I'm not mistaken. I forget the exact details of that. So we have to be very, very careful that we are allowing, we want to be allowing students to express their diversity in culture and religion and everything else, but that we aren't actually promoting it. All right? And the FCA does provide, by the way, the national organization, very good guidelines in order to make certain that the constitutionality is observed and that coaches are able to have their FCA while not violating the law. So I would definitely pay attention to what their website says to do. Okay, now, the other Mitchell points out shocking statistics concerning the rate at which police shoot and kill black suspects. Very good topic for social studies class, or for an English class dealing with social issues where the kids are doing expository or persuasive writing. Expose the issue, do an exposition or report on it, and then attempt to persuade the class, have a debate, discussion, whatever, with one another. I think those things are good usage, good opportunities to use language, discuss an important, timely issue in your classes. All right. Tyndall talks about financial privileges, about how the haves and the have-nots, and who's able to afford technology in the classroom and how that results in certain inequalities, and I agree. Sinwell says we need to be aware of our privileges. Teachers do not have to be oppressors. Parker says the challenge is to move from recognizing oppression to doing something about it. Yeah, that's always the rub. Easy to forget all this working in a school that is overwhelmingly one ethnic background. That's true, but in case many of you didn't notice it, when you looked, for those of us who looked at that study on black suspensions that came up of the University of Pennsylvania Graduate School of Education, where they actually named names. The districts in South Carolina that were the most offending and had the highest ratio of blacks to whites as far as suspension is concerned. More blacks being suspended at a rate 2, 3, or 4 times what whites were being suspended. Also had the lowest levels of minorities in schools. Their rate of minority participation in the student body was much, much lower. The average daily membership would be like 10% or less black, and yet the suspensions were 3, 4, 5, one case 6 times more than whites. What's going on there? What's going on there? I mean, that should give us pause right there. There's a call for social justice right there. What can you do? You can take that particular report, put it in front of your principal, all right, and say, we need to deal with this. All right, I want to be on the committee that deals with this. Is there one already formed? If not, let's do it. Let's be careful. If you're an administrator, just be conscious of it. I used to suspend kids all the time. Told you before, I told the other class, I always got the parents involved in on it, so that way they didn't feel like I was imposing this penalty unnecessarily on their kid. Right? Because I did an awful lot of discipline, and there's a way of doing it collaboratively with parents where they feel like they're being respected. And I was always pleased to be told by higher-ups that parents would tell them that they felt that Dr. Lucier respected them and brought them in on the decision-making process at a difficult time. Because when you have to confront a parent with what their kids have done, that's distressing for the parent on any level, no matter what. All right? And it can be done with sympathy. Wagner talks about taking differences into account when structuring research on social media, applying what we learn in the classroom to our dissertation writing. Right on. Cash, 17 here. Teaching about diversity while preparing students for citizenship. State-mandated social studies curriculum can be oppressive at times, he says. I happen to agree. Cultural imperialism. Students need to acquire knowledge to fight for social justice. That's social reconstructionism. Need for a curriculum of inclusiveness. Question accepted truths. And I put here CF, that means confer the writing of Freire, who wrote Pedagogy of the Oppressed in 1970, and his concept of conscientização in Portuguese. Everybody read Cash's posts every week I put here because his, I think, are particularly good. And if you haven't read it yet, here's another book for me to recommend to you. That's Paulo Freire's Pedagogy of the Oppressed. This is really, really good. If you haven't had it, not the easiest reading in the world. This is the 30th anniversary edition. It's relatively inexpensive. Pedagogy of the Oppressed. Very good book. All right. Another one I would recommend to you, as far as these books are concerned, let me show you what EDCS 726 read in 1997 when I took it. I took EDCS 726, Curriculum Leadership, back in 97. Here were Dr. Newman's books. Nice thick book on Dewey. All right, Reading John Dewey, How to Read John Dewey. Very, very good book. I really liked it. For those of you who find Dewey's writing difficult, Interpretations for a Postmodern Generation, edited by Larry Hickman. I recommend it highly. Reading John Dewey. So for those of you who find Dewey to be frustrating, there we go. Philosophy, Women in the Curriculum. Changing the Educational Landscape by Jane Rowland Martin. Another very good book I recommend to you. Dealing with women's issues. Pedagogy of the Oppressed. And this is all in 16 weeks, right? Making Progress with Dennis Carlson, who is now no longer with us, unfortunately. He was one of Susan's professors at Miami University of Ohio. That's where she went. Very good book. I think it's gone through several editions, and you might be able to pick up a used one. It's not thick, but it deals with a lot of these issues: education and culture in new times. Those are the 4 books. She had us write a paper. We did a lot of discussions, and we also read The Bluest Eye. We had a novel to read as well, over and above, which was really, really good. So we had 5 books to read for the course at that particular time, and of course we went to class. It wasn't online at the time. 1997, we did online education. It was just a glimmer in the eye of somebody in Silicon Valley Right? So we didn't have any of that back in the day, 18 years ago, right? Hard to believe, 18 years ago. Wow. All right, Kinsey talks about cultural norms serving to justify oppression. Nunamaker has an interesting post about Title I schools. Guy talks about the unintended consequences of testing resulting in overrepresentation of minority students in special ed. That's a real issue. All right. M. Thompson, he is a principal of incarcerated students and really apparently takes up for them and wants them to succeed when they get out. Experience teaching incarcerated students living with white privilege, minority students more likely to be suspected of wanting to commit a crime when doing something as simple as shopping. I wrote, read this post. Just read it. It's just awesome. Matt is doing the Lord's work, if you don't mind that metaphor. Matt, I love you. Keep it up. Hollis, teachers forced to sign codicils to their contracts in Spartanburg. All right, saying that they will abide by the social norms of the community. All male teachers must wear a tie every day. You know, there's only so much that a school district can enforce with regard to society's norms. They can expect you not on social media to criticize your school district or your students, but because that's part of, you might say, the implied morality clause. However, they can't tell you not to buy beer in a store or have a drink in public or, you know, any of those things, or, for instance, not be gay, and not be with your partner, for instance, or not have a picture of him or her on your desk. You can't do that. You just can't do that. Right? There's certain things that, look at what happened in Kentucky. That lady is in jail. She may be thinking that she's abiding by the will of God. The best thing for her to do, if she really feels that way, she can't do something and the state requires her to do it, is quite literally to consider resigning, because of the fact that the law says, and the court is very clear about this, the Bessinger case simply reinforced it in 1968, your religion and your beliefs do not give you a reason to impose those beliefs on other people and thereby to discriminate against them. So whereas Bessinger was saying that his interpretation of the Bible was that black and white needed to be separate and he was being forced to violate his religious beliefs by having black people come into the restaurant, into Piggy Park, which, by the way, is great barbecue. I love it. We have one down on Rosewood. It's just, good. All right, so you can't do that. And if you can't do that in a private accommodation, you can't do it in a public accommodation for sure. She's a public official. Public officials, absolutely, even more so than in private accommodations, have the responsibility to serve everybody regardless of your opinions about who and what they are and what they do. And if you can in good conscience do something, you know, it's not like getting an exception for military service because the state is compelling you to do something and you're asking for an exception from that compulsion. Instead, in this case, you are actively attempting to discriminate against somebody because you believe that that's what God wants you to do. You have the right to believe that. You have the right to preach it and teach it. You don't have the right to impose it on somebody else. And we as teachers don't have the right to impose our religious beliefs on our students. We all have religious beliefs. It's America. Free country. Hamilton, if anybody's oppressed in our society, then we all are. And I agree with that. Lift everyone up. Promote reproduction of and respect for difference. Teachers have the power to change lives in the classroom. Westbury, sometimes difficult position of white males, a conservative view, and a spirited discussion with your classmates. I really like that part of it. Look at Westbury's contributions for a little debate and chime in and put in your 2 cents. Good point made about drugs administered to sedate boys and make them behave. I was a pretty active little boy, and I used to get into trouble. And, it's something about being a guy. And education has always been difficult to sit still. I still have trouble. This is me being as sedate as you will ever see me. All right, here I am sitting in the room, but usually when I teach, I'm walking around. I can't sit still. It's just always been me. Timmons, hard work will not necessarily guarantee success. That's true. Some start the race with many advantages, others do not. White males need to recognize their privilege and respond sympathetically to those who are not so advantaged. Havern talks about intersectionality, and Cannon addresses the question of who am I. And I have some grammatical notes as well. This is the last video, I'm getting toward minute number 15. Make certain that both classes have had this book. All right? Because I believe the 820 classes had 720, of course, and the 726 classes had 720 as well. So the readings for diversity and social justice and this one here give you a tremendous amount of material, a lot of ideas for including diversity in your dissertation proposals, because you must do so. It is a requirement of the program. And I wish you well, and I hope you have a great Labor Day weekend. I love all of you and hope to hear from you soon. Bye-bye.